Good evening, everybody. So the budget process development, we started it back in January in terms of this board is concerned, and in the last board meeting we had an initial presentation for the board, and then we had our budget workshop. First one got snowed out, but we were able to kind of go longer on the second one and accomplish what we needed to accomplish. So everyone's had a chance to kind of digest the budget. At this point, we're at the point to kind of give you a final update on where this budget presentation is and give you a chance to vote on this. Want to make it clear that we do owe a budget to the Board of Finance tomorrow. The way the charter changed, they require that a budget from the Board of Education be presented to them on February 15th. So this is about as late as a meeting can go into the calendar year and still have us be able to accomplish what the charter requires us to do. So when we go through this, we'll have to take as long or as little time as it takes to make sure we have a budget that I can bring forth to the Board of Finance tomorrow night. So we know it's a difficult year. This year that we're in is a difficult year. We're actually down by about $1.4 million from what we thought we were going to be at last year. We've had a lot of conversation. We've made a number of cuts. We've worked with the town, and currently we're working to try to have a $1.1 million contingency fund that would make the town whole by the end of the year in this current fund. So when we went into developing the 18-19 budget, we had to keep the fact in mind that the state is not in much better position. And during this process, we also learned that the governor is proposing to reduce our funds for next year by $1.163 million. If that was all to happen, we'd actually end up with more ECS funds next year than we eventually got this year, but it still would be not a pretty picture. So when we built this budget, we tried to do so as tightly as we could, while still making sure that we offered our students what they need. And as a Board of Education, you guys know that your responsibility is to the students and families in our district. So we're trying to balance both the needs of the town, but also we need to make sure that we're there for the kids. So in terms of the presentation, it's just a few slides. That last slide was a little weird, but now I think we're good. So in this particular slide, this is a reminder of the January 10th estimate. On January 10th, we were looking at a difference for the 18-19 budget compared to 17-18 of just $12,000 or 0.05%. Then we went through our workshops, time elapsed, things changed a little bit, and so there's been some changes. We know that in our regular transportation costs for next year, there's a vote on a vendor for the regular transportation. If we go with that particular, if we vote on that contract, we actually have a reduction of one bus, which would be $52,000 worth of savings. However, diesel costs for next year are about 20 cents more per gallon, so we're expecting about $18,000 extra in diesel. And magnet school transportation, we're expecting to be behind by about $8,000. It's been previous years we've seen that the grant from the state to pay us back for magnet school transportation has pretty much zeroed us out. But with fewer students choosing to go to the magnet schools and the fact that there's a cap of $1,300 per student that we get from the state to cover magnet school tuition, we believe that we need to protect against $8,000 that we see as a difference for next year. And also in the new contract that you'll be voting on tonight, we believe that there'll be about an additional $37,000 for special education transportation that we hadn't factored in the first estimate for the budget. So there's a net change coming into tonight of an additional $10,440. So our updated proposal from the January 10th estimate actually puts us up $22,645, or 0.09%. It's essentially in a $24 million budget, almost no increase at all. And keep in mind, this still includes $320,000 increase in our insurance estimate. So in fact, we've had to find $300,000 of cuts in order to get where we are here. So even though this is a bit of an increase, that insurance cost did go up. And we're going to talk about insurance a little bit right now. So the healthcare update, on January 10th, we had made an assumption of a 14% increase. But in our budget documentation, we said it was a 10% increase because of the plan design changes that we had. But we did get a proposal back from Anthem actually saying that our increase is going to be more like 17%. And again, with those design changes, it's probably going to be more realistically like 13 or 14% increase. So that $320,000 is probably higher. But it's only March, and it's hard to figure out insurance. Insurance is one of those difficult pieces. As you've heard from Mr. Penn, we've been looking at 4 different insurance options for next year. One of them was Anthem, but we also went back out to bid, and we've received different bids. You know, we're also working with Ed Advance in terms of a consortium of the Litchfield County area, trying to create a different bid to come back. So we have 4 different bids now. And the state bid, we've talked about the state 2.0 plan. I'm not sure if you were on, not everyone was on the board when we first started talking about the state plan. But there was, originally we talked about getting onto the state plan a couple of years ago. But at that time, it wasn't going to save us any money. Now the potential exists that going on to the state plan would. So it has to be a legitimate conversation to talk about moving into that plan. So there's going to have to be quite a bit of conversation to understand that plan more fully, have conversations with our bargaining groups to make sure that everything would be, in terms of the language in the contract, it would be the way it needed to state. But that's a potential savings for the Board of Education. But tonight, I don't have enough information to be able to make any kind of definitive decision around that. So there could be some potential good news coming, but right now the news from Anthem is very poor. So originally at the last budget workshop, we talked about me coming in with potential adds to the budget if the healthcare costs came in below. But since Anthem's coming in higher, we decided that would not be fruitful at this time. However, we at the March board meeting, hopefully we'll have some better information, and that March board meeting does occur before our presentation to the Board of Finance. So you could take your adopted budget, and if you had the opportunity to, you could make some changes before I went to the Board of Finance. But I do still owe a budget to the Board of Finance tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So. But this insurance, and it's not just public school districts, but insurance has been a significant issue for lots of private businesses and certainly public agencies as well, trying to contain those costs. Some other considerations, we know that state aid is very much in flux. I've been sending out information to parents and board members about some articles that are out there. The governor's proposing another $800,000 cut in ECS. We're slated right now to get about $9.7 million in ECS funds for next year. But we know what happened this year. So to think that we're going to get all that money, I think is a little bit foolish to try to make that assumption and put ourselves in a difficult situation. That's why we're coming in with such a low budget than we've come in previous years. But he's proposing another $800,000 cut. Actually, it's the 1.1 in his proposal, but we know from talking to our state reps, Senator Henry Martin and Representative Whit Betts, that they're not for that at all. And in my monthly update to parents and staff Friday, I'm going to let everybody know who they could potentially talk to if they chose to, and they could say whatever they wanted to say on either side of the piece, but they need to know that they need to speak to their representatives on either side. But again, state reps are telling us they're opposed to the reduction in aid, but then there's the fiscal reality of where the state is right now, so we have to be aware of that. So the Board of Finance is going to have to select what they're going to put into their budget in terms of what they see as revenue from ECS. They may need to split the difference between what we're supposed to get in the biennial budget and what Governor Malloy is saying he thinks is the right thing to do. So it seems like a little bit of a, again, moving picture to try to figure out what's actually going to happen. And we realized this year we didn't find out what was actually going to happen until November, which was unfair to our districts, not just ours, but all the other districts that have had to make changes in midstream. So our remaining budget timeline, per the charter, the budget needs to go to the town tomorrow. I've got a meeting with the Board of Finance tomorrow night. There'll be a presentation to the Board of Finance March 15th, and that's a meeting that all of you should have in your calendar and be prepared to be present at. That's a meeting where the Board of Finance can ask questions about our budget, all those good things, before they make a decision. And then it will go to a town council meeting or just or go to a referendum. It all depends on what happens in terms of what the town council is wants to put forth. We know the town charter changed in that respect as well. So if it's under 3%, it doesn't need to go out to referendum, and likely would be less than 3%, given that there's another law on the books that talks about if you go over 2.5%, the additional money you need to pay to the state when you do that. So that's something that they have to be considering as well. So I would doubt that it's going to go over that number. And with us coming in essentially zero, that increase would have to come from pretty much the entire town side. So that's where we are. So if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know we've had, like I said, we've had our budget workshops and conversations, so I bring this to you tonight.